how do we feel physically while we're writing? And that question is, how did your body feel while you were writing? And the answers are comfortable. I do this all the time. My hands started to hurt. I holding the notebook was uncomfortable or awkward, or I couldn't find a good position at all. I wasn't because we're not used to writing like that. And it's possible we weren't paying any attention to our bodies because that's what happens when our brains take over in a process that is so intellectual, basically, like writing. It's like we might not even notice our bodies. And if we're not noticing our bodies, in many ways, that's really good. That means that we're comfortable, ideally, right? And again, it's one of those things that as we start developing the habit, we want to notice what's happening with our resistance, right? The thing that I see with a lot of folks when they first start or when they restart writing, they notice that their hand starts to hurt. I get this all the time in my classes because when I teach writing, the first thing we do at the beginning of the class is just sit quietly. People show up, they pull out their notebooks, they start writing. And one of the processes we go through is not only talking about having them read their writing, which we don't do in this class, but then we talk about how it felt to write. And some folks talk about their emotions. Other folks talk about their physical response. And I can just see even when they're writing, they start doing a lot of things like this, like kind of shaking out their hand while they're writing and just kind of like stopping for a second and massaging it and going in. Well, that says that the pen that you've chosen is your enemy. Yes. We don't want to have the tools that we use to work against us. So we want to make sure that we're using, as Natalie Goldberg, my writing mentor, would say, a fast pen. That's a pen that doesn't get in the way of our writing. And everybody has a different fast pen. I've got a couple of fast pens. The thing that I've noticed, and one of the things that I do very early in my writing classes, is I bring all sorts of types of pens. And we sit and we write for 3 minutes with each type of pen. Because if it's a fatiguing pen, you're going to notice it right away. So I don't make my folks write for very long. But this is to help my students and the people that I work with figure out what is going to facilitate this process, because there's enough going on in your mind. You don't want to have your body working against you. So the pen is really, mightier than the sword, something like that. Isn't that what they say? But so what you want to do is find a fast pen. And again, if you weren't noticing whether your hand hurts or not, that's actually great. That means you found the pen for you. But for those of you that haven't found the pen for you, let's talk about it. The thing that I know, and you might have other feelings about this, ballpoint pens are very tough to write with because it all involves like a lot of pressure. Let's see, do I even have a ballpoint? Yes, I have a ballpoint pen. It actually says first draft on it. It's one of these. And you have to like press really hard to get it to write. And they're often they're very narrow too, like those old Bics. And, love the Bics. We all grew up writing with Bics, right? So, or many of us did. But they're very narrow, so you're like cramping your hand to like hold on to this pen, and it can be very just fatiguing right before you even start. So what you want to do, now some folks love writing with ballpoint. They can't imagine doing anything else. So I'm not going to talk you out of it, but I will have you call it into question, right? Because that's all I ever do is like, I'm not going to convince you of anything, but I'm going to have you think about it for a minute. An upgrade from that, of course, would be a rollerball. These types of pens, which are a similar, because some people really like the feel, that kind of friction that happens with the ink coming out of something that it has to ooze around, right? And rollerballs move much faster and they're much more comfortable. And they also tend to be built in with like this little ergonomic space. And again, you're not cramping quite so much. You can actually hold it a little more restfully because you want to hold a pen. So it basically is essentially just resting in your hand. You're not working so hard to like write because you're working so hard up here. You want this part to just kind of help facilitate the flow. Okay. And then the next grade up, I think, would be the marker. And when I say marker, I don't mean I don't mean like a Crayola marker because that takes up too much space unless you're writing on a really big pad, which some of you might be. It's a really kinesthetic experience for you. You might want to write really large and great. That's wonderful, but that's not this course. That might be a calligraphy course that you do standing up with all the Japanese technique, which is delightful. And again, not about journaling. But so what I have used pretty much since my youth has been the classic Flair pen. And they've changed the design on it, changed the shaft, but they haven't changed how it's shaped at the top. So, and this is a reliably fast pen, and it also doesn't bleed through like other types of markers could. So I'm a big fan of the Flair. They're ubiquitous now. You can find them every place. And it used to be you had to go to art stores to find these. I started writing with these because my dad was an architect, so he would like kind of have them around the house. The other type of pen too is a little fatter, and I don't use this for journaling as much. I use this more for brainstorming, would be like this type of marker, which is the Pentel marker. These are a little tougher to write. They dry out faster. The Flair is much more robust. And boy, you can tell I've really thought about pens for a long time, right? So, but these are also a good choice. Again, they're wider if you compare. We've got just a little wider shaft, a little wider, not much, but again, it's all about feel. You want to love what your pen feels like. So that is, those are, you know, fast, easy pens that I've used all my life. And the other type of pen that's really fast is the fountain pen. Yes, the fountain pen. And those are a little more labor intensive. Those are kind of the writerly space, but the ink flows out of those fantastically. I've used Sheaffer pens. Sheaffer pens used to have a commercial, really cheap fountain pen that you could buy, and this was 25 years ago. And it was very light in the hand. The problem with fountain pens, you buy a fancy fountain pen and they start getting really heavy. They're more for that John Hancock signing the Declaration of Independence type of thing, although I think he used a quill. And that's, it depends on how much you really want to sink into some persona while you're writing this. You could write with a quill, but again, you want to keep your hand moving and not, constantly going back to the inkwell. But anyway, boy, that really overkilled the idea of pens. But the notion is you don't want to have anything that gets in the way of your keeping this practice up. And if your hand starts to feel fatigued, if you start feeling like you're getting a carpal tunnel or a cubital tunnel, which is like tennis elbow kind of stuff, while you're writing, you're using the wrong pen. It's a simple solve. Just get a faster pen.